Every night in prime time, America watches lawmen go to work. Cops, private eyes, and the proudest of them all, the FBI agent.
I'm Robert Kane, Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'll show you my credentials. That identifies me as being a Special Agent of the FBI.
Real investigators as these are, or fictional ones, FBI agents were a national institution, tracking foreign spies and gangsters. They always got their man. Why not? They belonged to the greatest law enforcement agency in the world.
He says she has to come out this back door, so I'll take him in his door.
Well, let's sit on the house a minute, and then I think we'll hit it, just to see.
Bring Guy down?
Yeah, bring him down.
Most of us either want to play professional hockey, football, or be an FBI agent, I guess, when you're young. And I wanted to be all three, I guess, and this is the one I fell into.
That's where they came over, right here.
The FBI agent was the best deterrent against crime we had because he seemed infallible. Not anymore. The FBI has become yet another casualty of the Watergate years. So have some of its agents. In a small town in Utah, this is a fallen agent who got into trouble because the FBI got into politics.
Oh, I don't believe that I embarrassed the Bureau as such. Perhaps they felt they may have been embarrassed by the things that happened.
An agent forced to resign because he might have embarrassed the Bureau. Lately, the Bureau has embarrassed itself. The Oswald cover-up, the massive domestic spying, the hounding of Martin Luther King, a pattern of unlawful actions by an agency dedicated to the law. Americans rarely questioned the Bureau's criminal investigations. We ignored altogether its other area of responsibility, national security, domestic intelligence. That's where most of the abuses developed. The reputation of the Bureau has been badly damaged, perhaps destroyed. 6 months ago, CBS News began staking out FBI agents, and without the Bureau's knowledge, we met their unpublicized mercenaries, the informers. We know the headlines. We wanted to know how these things could have happened.
CBS reports Inside the FBI with correspondent Dan Rather.
We want a wholesome person to start with, someone who gets along well with people, an extrovert to a degree, a person well aware of current events, someone who will fit into the type of organization we have, and I think that's part of the concept we look for, this well-rounded individual, athletic to a degree. He comes into a classic type organization and he's socialized into it through a training program. But we'd prefer to have the fellow who is just anybody Mr. USA.
Mr. USA has to compete for his place at the FBI Academy. Only 2 out of every 100 applicants are accepted. 1 in 10 will fail to complete the 15-week course.
Don, ready? Rat buster.
Most of the trainees we met are from blue-collar backgrounds, first-generation college graduates who know where they're going. They are short on self-doubt, high on self-discipline, eager for action.
Let's go.
Who are your heroes? The astronauts, I guess, for one. There's people have the courage to go up in the spaceship to the moon or whatever.
I admire people who stand up for their convictions. Patton, Billy Graham, some of the former presidents, Teddy Roosevelt, Lincoln.
I'd say Frederick Douglass, I'd say Lincoln, and I'd say Johnson, President Johnson, Lyndon Johnson.
I think anybody that would assume authority would have to be admired, and not the least of which I think I'd have to put my father there. Just as a father figure, I've always admired him.
You should take this information, basically, and then, through investigation, develop sufficient information that you can prove it in court without exposing her identity.
The Bureau has never published detailed biographical statistics of its 8,400 agents. We do know that all recruits must be college graduates. Most are service veterans. 1 in 7 is a lawyer, 1 in 12 an accountant. They have all been thoroughly investigated for background, character, and loyalty.
And never promise them anything.
I believe I'm a very conservative person in manner and in dress. Politically, I'm rather conservative. I believe most of us are rather patriotic. We have a deep love for the country and we want to see it preserved. And the way the crime rate is spiraling on us, it's almost terrifying.
Yeah, let him just take a couple more photographs.
An agent's chances of investigating a real homicide are remote, unless it occurs on federal property. Agents handle 150 different kinds of federal cases, crimes involving interstate activity like kidnapping, stolen cars, racketeering, and gambling, as well as bank robberies and presidential assassinations. They are also charged with defending our national security against espionage, sabotage, and subversion. But the statutes are sufficiently broad that the Bureau can invariably find a good reason to investigate crimes of national impact, such as the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, the assassination of Martin Luther King, or the LaGuardia airport bombing. In short, the Bureau can look into anything it chooses, and the new recruits must be prepared for anything.
It didn't appear to me as each person had a specific task. No one even checked that body. Why don't you look in that pocket in there and see what you find? Take the sheet off and look in the pocket. Have you identified the body yet?
No, sir. We didn't identify.
Okay, would that hurt anything by looking in the pocket? What does it say on there?
Barbara B. Good.
What does it say?
Barbara B. Good.
B. Good.
Left and back. Men, look at the gun. Once you hit it, it's the most important thing in your life. At that instance, there's no point in looking up at the sky. Left.
The gun is another FBI symbol. The myth of the FBI agent as quick on the draw dates back to the days of Dillinger. The public liked the myth, so the Bureau preserved it. Last year, agents were involved in fewer than 50 shooting incidents.
Okay, men, it'll be coming to your right, with the exception of the man on number 1. Start walking. Hit 1. Hit 2. Hit 3.
The FBI Academy is attached to a military base, and it looks like one.
Number 6, stand by to your left. Hit 6.
The training stresses the military virtues of teamwork, loyalty, and discipline.
The man on number 1. Start walking.
But the Bureau is not an army. Away from the academy, these recruits will often have to operate alone.
2, hit number 1, to your right. Hit 1, 2, 3.
Can you see yourself refusing an order?
Yes.
Under what circumstances?
Well, I can't foresee me getting an order that I could refuse. I mean, I would think that the person would have enough on the ball that he would give me orders that would be something that I would give the same order in the situation, hopefully. So, but if I didn't think it was right, I'm sure I would, yes.
I believe that I could refuse an order. If an order so violated my own moral convictions, I would refuse, and I would resign. But I don't ever expect to face that problem in the Bureau.
But in the past, agents have obeyed questionable orders from their superiors. Their work can be dangerous, so they soon learn to trust each other far more than any outsider. Agents place a high value on loyalty, which is why they almost never criticize the Bureau. Most recruits leave the academy already committed to 20 secure years of public service. All agents nominally work for the Justice Department, but the FBI has traditionally been very independent. Inside the new J. Edgar Hoover building, computers, laboratories, and millions of fingerprints and case files presided over by Bureau Director Clarence Kelly and a staff of 7,500. An enormous bureaucracy designed to support the 8,400 agents throughout the United States. Agents like Ange Roby, supervisor of the FBI's bank robbery squad in Atlanta. Roby has been an agent for 28 years, 18 of them in Atlanta. He earns more than $33,000 a year and will retire with an annual pension of $26,000. He and his 13-man squad cover all of metropolitan Atlanta. Since catching criminals is what the FBI is supposed to do best, we elected to watch Roby and his men try.
Everybody know where we're going now.
Tuesday morning, word reaches Roby that a suspect in a Florida jewel heist telephoned Atlanta shortly before the robbery. Most of his agents are tied up with an attempted bank robbery, so he assigns the jewelry case to veteran agent Bob Parker.
Bob, you're familiar with that jewelry heist in Fort Lauderdale yesterday?
Yes, sir.
I just got a call from Gene McKinney down there. He says the loot on this thing's going to run about $500,000. You got a description of your robber. He's a big fella, 6'2". Here is a composite they just sent me on the wire on the robber. Incidentally, something you ought to know. Before that robbery come off, about 3 or 4 days, somebody visited those galleries, a young fella and a girlfriend, good-looking blonde. And there are descriptions in the teletype.
Okay.
And they might be the people who are living out in Roswell Road. We just got to talk to them and see what connections they have with the robbery.
Okay.
Okay, Jim Hart will meet you out there.
Jim
He's
Hart?
in AT-11.
All right,
I'll give him a
very
call
good.
here.
See if we can find 4E and do it as quiet as possible, and then we'll...
Parker, joined by Agent Jim Hart, reaches Roswell Road. Briefcase, not gun in hand. A detective's major function is questioning witnesses. It takes more patience than heroism. At this moment, all the agents know is that there is a relationship between the jewel thief and someone in this house.
We'll check with the rental office and see what the status is. Hey, my name is Bob Parker, the FBI.
Yes, sir.
I wonder if I might talk to you a minute.
Surely.
Miss Jensen, do you have a party residing in apartment 4E by the name of Carlton?
Yes, I do.
You think you might look at this and see if that all resembles Mr. Charlton at all?
Well, I couldn't absolutely, say that it is Mr. Carlton, but it does resemble him.
It does resemble him.
I think his hair is more, he has a little fuller hair than that.
Showed him the sketch, and she says it resembles him, but, however, viewed as being an artist's conception, she's not certain, but it does favor him somewhat.
Okay. There's some similar description there. Yeah, we're going to have to resolve this real quick. Eliminate this guy one way or the other. You know, he had an 8-minute telephone call. That's something. 8 minutes the day before the robbery.
Later that afternoon, Agent Parker checks back with the rental office.
Mrs. Jensen, this is Bob Parker, the FBI. You think he's still there? But he did come home.
Mr. Carlton has returned.
That's just the way it goes sometime, I declare. But he's driving a Cadillac? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Miss Jensen. Bye. Yeah? Yes, we probably passed him. I don't see any Cadillac. Oh, my gracious. I don't see any lights on.
It takes Parker and Hart 20 minutes to get back to Roswell Road, but their quarry has gone again.
God damn it. By then?
At 11 p.m., the agents finally catch up with him. Neighbors have given Carlton a partial alibi, but he has no convincing explanation for the phone call. Parker takes his fingerprints, but has no justification for an arrest. Hours later, a fingerprint check reveals that Carlton has a criminal record. By that time, he has fled, leaving his most recent alias behind him.
Green Beret, First Lieutenant, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. I don't know what that is, but if he got it in jail. And there was in the Army. But yeah, Matchy, fellow looks good in his uniform.
Armed with a warrant, Parker and Hart searched the house for the jewels. Carlton's alibi has collapsed. He is the Florida jewel thief after all. The 8-minute phone call had been to his girlfriend. Both agents had treated their suspect with due respect for his legal rights. True, we were watching, but in criminal cases at least, the FBI began safeguarding the rights of the accused even before the recent Supreme Court rulings. The agents could have staked out the house, but unlike Sherlock Holmes, they handle more than one case at a time. And unlike Kojak, they can't often call in patrolmen to do their legwork. The search reveals nothing, and Edward Richard Jones, alias Carlton, is still at large. I have to believe if I were in your shoes today, I'd feel so frustrated that I'd want to, I don't know what. Do you feel that way?
More mad than frustrated. It's tough when you know you got him and don't know who you got, then you find out when you don't have him who he is, if that makes any sense.
That makes sense.
After a while, I think you reach the point where you have come to the conclusion that some days it takes just a little bit longer.
What happens now?
Well, we understand he's very close to his little boy, and we know the location of his ex-wife and child, and we think that possibly he may not visit there today or tomorrow, but he will.
And he did. Jones was arrested 24 hours later in Shreveport, Louisiana, visiting his son. What the Bureau lacks in manpower, it makes up for in interstate communications. A solid investigation? Yes. But the image of the FBI as gun-toting men of action takes a beating. A few weeks after this arrest, Jones agreed to show the FBI where he hid the jewels. Escorted by 3 agents and 3 federal marshals and handcuffed to one of the marshals, Jones dug up a gun instead of the jewelry, held up his captors, and drove off in one of their cars. He was recaptured a day later, but the Bureau was understandably embarrassed. Most FBI agents do not belong to the specialized crime squads in the big city field offices. More than 2,000 agents work in rural America, in what the Bureau calls resident agencies. Jack Halper and his senior partner Bob Kane operate a 2-man agency in Athens, home of the University of Georgia. Agents Kane and Halper handle all federal crimes over a 10-county area, 360 square miles, where the cases are often far from glamorous, particularly for the best educated lawmen in the nation. During the civil rights disturbances of the 60s, Bob Kane played a key role in the breakup of the local Ku Klux Klan. But these days, his job is strikingly white-collar.
Our business is dealing with people, interviews. This is our bag, as the saying goes. And quite often I'm kidded about being identified throughout the community. I've been here 22 years. And they'll say, well, doesn't this hinder your operation as an FBI agent? This is not true. I pride myself on knowing a lot of people, and through this knowledge and friendship, quite often I secure valuable information that assists me in my work as an FBI agent.
Another day, another interview.
Mrs. Perkins, how are you? Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I have some photographs to show you in connection with the man that gave some bad checks around Athens.
I'm Agent Halper from the FBI out of Athens, Georgia. Credentials here, and this is Agent Bob Kane, also from the FBI out of Athens.
Good to meet you, Susan. I bet you were mighty disappointed when you learned the car was stolen.
I'm telling you, I just got through having it worked on and new tires and goody things like that.
In stolen car cases, the rural FBI agent is more often super clerk than super cop.
D as in David, 0634-805-1975.
J. Edgar Hoover used to be fond of totaling up the cash value of recovered vehicles as a way of justifying the FBI's annual budget to Congress. But it's often true that the local police actually recover the cars, while the agents simply coordinate interstate paperwork. Another of Bob Kane's functions is to check the background of applicants for federal jobs. He's the federal government's man about town.
Fred, I want to ask you about an applicant, a person that you've known for considerable years, and I'd like to secure your comments about his character and his reputation, particularly the length of time that you have known.
From the late 40s, certainly 30, better than 30 years. So it's been a long time.
Did you have occasion to socialize?
Oh, yes.
In regard to his character and reputation, what comments could you make?
It's his other role as character analyst that makes Kane's job controversial. The FBI agent is national security watchdog as well as criminal investigator. So it's Kane's responsibility in Athens to watch anyone the Bureau defines as an enemy of the state. Its definitions are usually broad.
There's a small group of socialists at the University of Georgia, isn't there?
There has been, Dan, but at the current time, I don't think they have sufficient numbers to have what is known as a group, adequate numerical count. From time to time, there have been members of that group.
Have you had them under surveillance at any time?
No, I have not.
Why not? The record indicates that it was Bureau policy over a fairly long period of time on a national basis to, at the very least, have them under surveillance.
I had no reason to. Number one, there were not very many members of this group at the University of Georgia. When I say not very many, I think at the maximum they may have had 5. They attempted to organize, I knew of this, but they did not get any kind of a membership response from the members of the student body. They were unsuccessful, really, in getting a group off the ground. They had people from this group, from Atlanta, come to Athens, in an effort to get a going group organized.
But if they reached a certain size, you would then have them under surveillance?
Not necessarily, no. We would like to know the identities of these people.
Why?
Well, for instance, if some serious action against one of the federal statutes was contemplated by this group, I think it would be in the favor of the FBI to know who the potential violators might be.
But this is a political party, and it has never had a history of, number one, violence, number two, any connection with a foreign power, and it does not advocate overthrow of the United States government. Under what law would you have them under surveillance?
Well, it would have to come under the federal statutes involving the internal security of the United States. Right. These people are opposed to the American form of government. These statements had been made by this group.
How does the Bureau decide who is an enemy of the state? Under J. Edgar Hoover, it was a combination of statute and personal taste. A lot of people's personal taste. Take the case of Abdeen Jabara, an American of Arab descent. In the 60s, Jabara was a campus activist who supported Arab causes. Later, he was one of Sirhan's lawyers. Jabara has been under intense physical and electronic surveillance for 8 years. He has never been accused of a single criminal offense. With ACLU lawyer John Shattuck, Jabara is now suing the Bureau and has just received portions of his FBI file.
Here there are over 125 different occasions when they have met with informers concerning my activity. Here is another 12 instances when they received information about me and my activities from domestic Zionist organizations. Information which they admit they'd make no independent effort to verify or to check out. Here's a very sinister activity I engaged in on December 20th, 1968. I read poetry to a group of 30 or 35 people at Wayne State University. Here's another very sinister activity. May 18th, 69. Participated as a speaker at a rally at Kennedy Square.
The FBI has contacted your associates, clients, friends, neighbors, and talked to them about you. We don't know what they've said because they refuse to tell us. Now, you've had some trouble keeping your clients, I think, as a result of this, haven't you?
Well, I've had people actually tell me that they were fearful of telephoning me after the information on the wiretap surveillance came out.
Jabara is not an isolated case. the FBI's Washington headquarters contains 6.5 million active files on some 59 million Americans. In its national security capacity, the FBI gathers information on anyone it considers potentially dangerous and sometimes anyone it dislikes. When the Bureau decided that Los Angeles Times reporter Jack Nelson was out to get the Bureau set out to get Nelson.
Jack, I take it this is your FBI file?
Well, that's as much of it as they gave me.
It's not complete?
It's not complete.
What's in it?
Various memoranda to J. Edgar Hoover, from J. Edgar Hoover, concerning allegations that I was supposed to be out to wreck the FBI, to wreck their case against the Berrigans and the alleged conspiracy to kidnap Henry Kissinger. For example, on 1/26/71, we advised the Attorney General and the White House of Nelson's vendetta against us, pointing out in part that we have been informed on 4 occasions that Nelson has the assignment of getting the director. We noted that blank, 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 you know, they censored this before they sent it out, had advised us that Nelson, who had several drinks, had told him he, Nelson, had been assigned to Washington to write a series of derogatory articles on the director. Now, anybody at the LA Times could tell you that's absolutely nonsense, you know.
Now, this is a memo from the FBI to itself for your file, and it says that they informed the Attorney General, Mr. Mitchell, and the White House?
And the White House.
What would they be doing informing the White House?
Well, it beats the hell out of me. But they did spread these rumors around, and Mr. Hoover did try to get my job, no question about that. He spent 3 hours with Robert Nelson, the general manager of the Los Angeles Times, in which he repeated all these allegations that I'm telling you about that's in the file.
This is J. Edgar Hoover personally?
This was J. Edgar Hoover personally.
Tell me about that meeting.
Well, he spent 3 hours with Robert Nelson, no relation to me, and told him these various things. Told him that I had gone out on occasions and would be drunk in a bar and would say that I was going to get Hoover and that I was going to wreck the FBI.
This is your boss he was talking to.
Well, this is the general manager of the Los Angeles Times, not my immediate superior or anything, but he is a top executive of the LA Times.
He could have fired you.
Well, I suppose that he could have, I imagine he could have arranged it, but the paper stood behind me all the way. There was no question about that.
Jack, what's the last line on your feelings about this? Are you angered about it, embittered about it, amused by it?
Well, sure, I don't like it. I don't like the fact that anybody in the Bureau today can come along and take this file out and read some of these allegations and possibly believe them. I don't know, what they might do, but I don't like that. I don't like the fact that that the Bureau still not only maintains these files, but according to Mr. Kelly recently, they still continue to collect information on the personal behavior of journalists and politicians and others. And I mean, I don't understand what the purpose of collecting information, whether accurate or inaccurate. I don't understand the purpose of collecting it unless there's an official investigation going on. And I mean, it sort of bothers me that the FBI does continue that practice.
Today, the FBI declined comment on the Nelson investigation, but said such things no longer happen.
From harassing individuals to harassing all dissenters was an easy step. We now know that for at least 15 years, COINTELPRO, the Bureau's counterintelligence program, was designed for such a political purpose. The Bureau planned more than 2,500 actions to disrupt 5 loosely designated targets: communists, socialists, white hate groups, black hate groups, and the New Left. All were considered guilty until proven innocent. Many of these groups were prepared to break the law, but sometimes for political reasons it was the FBI who helped them do it. In the turbulent days of anti-war marches and draft card burnings, a group of radicals known as the Camden 28 planned to break into the Camden, New Jersey draft office. The FBI knew of their plans through an informer, Robert Hardy. But the protesters had neither the knowledge nor the equipment to accomplish the break-in until the FBI, through Hardy, lent a hand. Without Hardy and the FBI, there would have been no raid.
You were an informer for the FBI?
Yes, I was.
As part of the FBI's counterintelligence program?
I guess you could say that, yes. I was a volunteer. I wasn't someone they sought out.
You were a volunteer?
Yes, I went to the FBI to inform upon some people that I felt was breaking the law.
Tell me about that.
In Camden, several years ago, a group of people came into Camden and solicited my help to break into a draft board. And I
try to discourage them from it, and they would not be discouraged. I knew that they perhaps they weren't aware of what they were getting into. They were sort of idealistic. They were priests. They were Franciscan brother. There was half a dozen people who were social workers. You know, they were at the level of people who normally respond to needs.
So in 1971, you helped plan a raid on the Camden draft offices.
I helped plan a raid on the Camden draft office, a raid that I never thought would take place.
How far was the raid supposed to go?
It was supposed to be stopped at a conspiracy level. In other words, once the FBI gained enough information to have a solid conspiracy case and their legal department said, yes, we have enough evidence for a conviction, it was to stop there.
How much help did you get from the FBI?
They paid for everything financially. They paid for my time. They paid for the equipment. They gave me equipment to use. Like we needed a special drill that could drill through glass windows without breaking it. And I didn't have that in my possession. I never had a need for it. So one of the agents had it and brought it to me. And you know, I taught some of the members of the 28 how to use it, how to drill through. Of course, you're aware of on post offices they have special glass, and it doesn't just break easily. So we learned how to drill through windows. I picked up an iron window similar to what's used on the post office, and we practiced on that.
Rough estimate, if necessary, how much money was involved?
Just for me and the equipment?
Yes.
Perhaps $10,000, no, maybe $10,000 or $12,000 for in a period of about 8 weeks.
How important a member of the group were you? Were you a leader?
In the Camden 28, myself and one other man was considered the leaders, yes.
So at this stage, what was the plan? The plan was it was to be a dry run. The FBI was to move in at that time.
Yes, that was the plan. Again, we sat in the truck and I said, okay, FBI, I said, so-and-so's over here, so-and-so's there. You know, the truck's coming down the alley, the people are in it, the dry run is taking place, everybody's here that should be here, and they let it pass. The explanation that was given to me is that someone in the little White House in California had made a decision not to lock them up that night.
Who expressed that to you?
My agent, that was my contact.
To the very best of your recollection, what did he say?
Just that. He said, Bob, someone in the little White House in California decided not to make the arrest tonight. This is a big thing and they have to get permission for it. You know, every step practically was a permission step.
A permission from?
From someone quite much higher than the Philadelphia director.
The night of the actual raid, your understanding of what was going to happen was?
It would be picked up at the street. In other words, I had my van blocked at the corner of 5th and Market Street, blocking the alleyway so no one could accidentally pull down there. I had my ignition switch on, no motor running, and I had the hood of my truck up as if I was having a problem with the truck. And I was talking to my contact. It was a one-way radio, but they had been receiving me well for 6 weeks. And I'm saying, okay, John Peter Grady is over here, and so-and-so's over here. And here comes the truck up the alley with the 8 or 9 people that were in there that was going to actually go up on the roof. And they're putting the ladder against the truck, or against the building. And I think you guys are messing around, you know.
Get this straight. The FBI allowed them to do what?
They allowed them to, well, see, once you're on the roof, you're trespassing on government property, which is the first charge. And when you break through a window, you know, trespassing and breaking property, so that's the second charge. And once they were in the office, they allowed them to destroy records and destroy property for over an hour, maybe an hour and a half. In that time, I went to a phone and I called up my Philadelphia FBI headquarters and talked to a gentleman. I told him, I said, you know, what is happening here? They said, well, we weren't sure where everybody was. I said, well, you were sure for 6 weeks that everything I said was right. And now it's not. I said, you really put it to us. And he said, well, something like that's a matter of viewpoint. And with that, I hung up and I went home.
Hardy believed that the FBI had deceived him. In 1973, when the case of the Camden 28 came to trial, he became a witness for the defense instead of the prosecution. At the trial, the FBI never rebutted Hardy's testimony, and the Camden 28 were acquitted because of the FBI's role.
CBS Reports Inside the FBI with correspondent Dan Rather will continue.
A couple of the people that are going on trial are up here at this corner, Dave. There's two of our subjects. A couple of people there. I want to get a license plate number here.
In fiction, the FBI agent runs, jumps, or shoots his way to the criminal. In reality, he gets there by the continuous accumulation of information that one day might add up to a prosecution.
He's a guy we're interested in. He's connected with the wise guys down here. He's a fairly large bookmaker, money lender.
Agent John Connolly of the FBI's organized crime squad in Boston, like his colleagues, is a collector.
You know, we're always looking for, naturally, people that see things our way. We're always looking for help. We try, it's part of our business. Our business is information. We're only as good as the information that we get. If we're getting good information, we're successful.
The hidden statistic of crime is that 9 times out of 10, it's an informer who supplies the information leading to an arrest. This is true not just for the Bureau, but for Scotland Yard and other police forces. There are simply too many criminals leaving too few clues.
Oh, yeah, listen, that information was good, you know. Yeah, that was good. That was right on the money. Matter of fact,
Connolly has 10 informers. He must treat each like a mistress, earn his trust, hide his identity, and protect him whenever possible.
Unless you want to wear an armored suit for a while, I wouldn't be sitting next to him, you know. It's getting hot from. Yeah. So we want him pretty bad, you know. Yeah, he's a bad kid. He's a bad kid. If he gets a hold of a few pieces, you know, we'll be in trouble.
The volume of crime today makes informers more valuable than ever to the Bureau. But it can be a dangerous relationship all around. Dangerous for the agents because they depend on individuals who are untrained and unreliable. Dangerous for the informers because they can be asked to risk their necks or even break the law on the Bureau's behalf. In criminal cases, the courts provide guidelines to protect the relationship from abuse. But in that other area of Bureau operations, national security, there are no rules to follow. We investigated just such a case in California, where both the Bureau and its informer got involved in violence. In 1972, the Bureau was worried about the buildup of radicals in anticipation of the Republican National Convention that summer. Extremists from both the left and the right were planning to disrupt the convention in San Diego. Among them was the ultra-right-wing Secret Army, which hated the Nixon administration almost as much as it hated the left. It occurred to the FBI that one way to direct the Secret Army's hostilities away from the administration and the convention was to point it at another target, the far left. The man to do it was an FBI informer named Howard Godfrey. You were an informer for the FBI?
That's correct.
Why?
I felt it was my duty to, under the circumstances. I was approached by a radical group. When I was contacted by them, I went to the FBI and explained what I'd been contacted by, and they asked me to go ahead and become an informant.
Radical group from the right or left?
From the right.
Did the FBI inform you of the presence of left-wing dissidents in the San Diego area?
Oh, yes.
Did the FBI ask you to investigate or harass them?
They asked me to investigate them, yes.
Not to harass them?
They were aware of harassment that went on. Specific instances, there was, what occurred a lot of times was right-wing groups harassed left-wing groups. Traditionally, the position I was in, I had to go along with some harassment. The FBI was aware that this was happening. They were aware of it.
Did they try to stop it?
No.
So in 1972, with the Republican convention scheduled for San Diego, you were second in command with the so-called Secret Army organization?
For the state of California.
Were you directing operations against the left?
Yes, I was.
Under whose orders?
Under the orders of Jerry Lynn Davis.
Who was?
The state commander of the Secret Army organization.
Ever under FBI orders?
Against left-wing groups within the San Diego area. Yes, primarily surveillance operations.
What happened on the night of January 6, 1972?
January 6th, if I recall correctly, was the Peter Bomer incident, or the Paula Tharp
What happened?
incident. That was the night that George Mitchell Hoover shot Paula Tharp.
Tell me about that.
That particular night, we were George Mitchell Hoover and I were surveilling Peter Bomer's home.
And Mr. Hoover was a member of the secret Army organization?
That's correct.
Mr. Bomer was?
A left-wing college professor at San Diego State.
And you and Mr. Hoover were driving around, as you say, surveilling?
That's correct. What happened that night is Mr. Hoover had picked up a firearm that was underneath the front seat of my car. Unbeknownst to me, he'd put a round in it. As we went by, he fired a shot at, well, two shots at Peter Bomer's house. One of which hit Paula Tharp, a guest at the house.
One of his shots hit a guest?
That's correct.
Was it your gun that fired the shot?
Well, the gun was in my car, yes, in my possession.
Who specifically targeted the subjects of that shooting?
Well, nobody knew the shooting was going to occur beforehand.
No, but who targeted them as subjects for surveillance?
The subjects for the surveillance. The first mention I believe I ever heard of him was from the FBI.
Of this college professor?
That's correct.
They wanted to know more about him and what he was doing?
They were very interested in him, yes.
What other activities were directed against this college professor who was accused of being left-wing?
Primarily stickers were used against him. There was a bulletin put out on him at one time, a special intelligence bulletin.
Propaganda sheet?
Yes, And I know there was a few phone calls made, things like that.
Threatening telephone calls?
I understand they were, yes.
Did you ever make a threatening telephone call to him?
No.
The Bureau knew about all this?
Oh, yes.
What was the FBI's reaction to the shooting?
I informed the FBI the next day, gave them the gun and the jacket that Mr. Hoover was wearing. Their reaction would, well, wait and see what would happen. I'd let them take care of it.
What did they do with the gun?
What did they do with the gun? I gave the gun to Steve Christensen. I understand from later transcripts that he kept the gun at home.
He is what, or was?
He was a special agent of the FBI.
Was he your principal contact?
At that time, yes.
We have a situation here in which you were driving around with a person. That person fires 2 shots into the night. One of those shots strikes a citizen who is committing no crime. But there are no arrests after the shooting. Now, as a citizen, didn't that bother you at the time?
Well, to some degree, but I was assuming at that point that they had something more important in mind.
How often did you talk with the Bureau?
Almost daily.
Personally, by telephone?
One or the other. I probably saw an agent at least once a week, talked to him by phone every day.
Now, you were paid by the Bureau.
That's correct.
Can we talk candidly about that?
I don't know why not.
For how long were you paid?
Approximately 5.5 years.
And about how much a month?
It varied from when I started probably nothing, or like $30 a month, up to about $250 a month at the end.
You're an expert on explosives?
That's a debatable question, but I understand something about them.
If not an expert, then you're a knowledgeable amateur.
Yeah, I would think so.
Let's don't play games. You know a good deal about explosives.
Yes,
Were you the Secret Army's teacher?
No.
Did they have people who knew more about explosives than you did?
Yes.
Teacher or not, the Secret Army's last violent act was the bombing of a San Diego porno theater in June 1972. By then, the convention had been moved to Miami. It was time to bring charges against the Secret Army for the bombing and also the earlier shooting. Godfrey was called in as the key prosecution witness, his cover blown. At the trials, 2 Secret Army men were convicted and received jail terms. I asked Godfrey if he still considered his operation a success.
I think you could call it that.
I don't understand why, if the operation was a success, that your principal contact, Agent Christensen, after only 6 years in the Bureau, was forced into early retirement?
Well, I think there was a couple of things there. One was the incident with the weapon. I'm sure that the Bureau, for reasons of their own, was not totally happy with that. I'm not quite sure why.
Do you know where he is now?
Yes, I do.
Where is he now?
In Kanosh, Utah.
That's a pretty remote place.
That's correct.
The FBI's role as agent provocateur in the Secret Army affair was embarrassing. Someone had to go. Agent Stephen Christensen was the obvious candidate. He was Godfrey's control. To protect Godfrey's cover, he had hidden the gun.
I left the Bureau because of my involvement with Howard Godfrey as an informant. I was concerned primarily about his welfare, his safety and well-being, and that of his family. It would be hard to resent the circumstances. They have no feelings. Hard to do.
Christensen now runs a grocery store in Kanosh. He shows no bitterness toward the Bureau. Like an agent breaking into an embassy, the rule is don't get caught. But he thinks about his experience and its implications a lot.
The problems, the gray areas, the difficulties with knowing exactly what to do and what not to do, where to stop. And these are things which even yet I have been unable to fully resolve for myself.
Any regrets?
Yes and no. I have mixed emotions on that question. There's a few things I'd like to have done differently.
Can you give me an example?
I think I might not have got in quite as deep.
Was it the Bureau encouragement that got you in deeper than you wanted to be?
I ended up deeper than I originally planned, yes.
I would think, and this would be based a little bit on my experience and the things that I've read since then, that it's going to be very difficult for the Bureau and probably for any other government agency to fully resolve this problem to the satisfaction of even a majority of the people, let alone all of them. I don't see how it could really be done.
The Secret Army affair highlights the danger of asking FBI agents to operate without a clear definition of their legal, moral, and political limitations. The Bureau insists that it did not break the law and that the shooting and bombing were not its idea. Testifying before a Senate committee, FBI Director Clarence Kelly admitted that the FBI has made mistakes, but he insisted that his agents are honorable men.
I said then in 1974, and what I believe today, is that the FBI employees involved in these programs did what they felt was expected of them by the President, the Attorney General, the Congress, and the people of the United States. Bomb explosions rocked public and private offices and buildings. Rioters led by revolutionary extremists lay siege to military, industrial, and educational facilities. There were many calls for action from members of Congress and others, but few guidelines were furnished. FBI employees recognized the danger, felt that they had a responsibility to respond, and in good faith initiated actions designed to counter conspiratorial efforts of self-proclaimed revolutionary groups and to neutralize violent activities. In the development and execution of these programs, mistakes of judgment, admittedly, were made.
Director Kelly is ready to accept congressional guidelines, and Congress will probably respond with some kind of legislation later this year. Some critics suggest that the Bureau should be split in two, one agency catching criminals, another defending national security. Maybe. But this is just an administrative sidestep of a fundamental problem in society. Who polices the police? For a long time, nobody but J. Edgar Hoover did. While Hoover created some remarkable cops and investigators, his greatest skill was as a publicist. He convinced the Bureau not to question the notion that father knows best, and he convinced the public that the Bureau had no weaknesses. So far, Director Kelly's greatest service to the Bureau has been to make it more open to outside scrutiny. For publicity is exactly what the FBI needs, not from the inside looking out, but from the outside looking in. The task of policing the police is too important to be left to one branch of government or even the law. In the future, the FBI will have to be seen to be believed. Dan Rather for CBS Reports.
White vinyl top with Georgia license P. Paul, B. Boy, F. Frank, 889, driven by white male, described as 6 feet 2 inches tall, 190 pounds, brown hair, blue eyes, using identity of Edward Richard Carlton. He's wanted for armed robbery of jewelry store in Fort